Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up. Lillian Mutambo has just delivered what can only be described as a Netflix limited series of Facebook Lives. A multi-hour performance where legal arguments, prophecies, and conspiracy theories hold hands and march straight into the court of public opinion without stopping for evidence. At the heart of a claim is that the Zambian government's push to bury former President Edgar Lungu in Zambia is nothing short of a personal vendetta, a spiritual battle, and an elaborate political chess move to humiliate the man in death. Yes, because in Lillian's legal universe, state funeral apparently translates to state-sponsored insult. Let's start with a dramatic opener. ECL, she says, ran away to South Africa like a refugee. Picture it. The former commander-in-chief crossing Beit Bridge with a rucksack and no return ticket. But here's the thing. Asylum status isn't granted through gossip. The South African Department of Home Affairs has no record of Lungu as an asylum seeker, and the UNHCR hasn't issued a single statement about him. Yet in Mutambo's retelling, these missing facts are just details we shouldn't worry about, because, wait for it, she knows. She goes further. President Hakainde Hichilema personally blocked Lungu's medical trips. In her mind, HH is not busy running a country. He is personally stationed at Kenneth Kaunda International Airport with a giant denied stamp. There is no paperwork, no cabinet office letter, no official denial. Just her anecdote, which in Facebook court apparently counts as a sworn affidavit. And then comes the emotional hook. The government only wants the body to mock him. Forget that every Zambian president before him, Kaunda, Mwanawasa, Banda, Sata, was buried in Zambia as a matter of state protocol. Forget that a former head of state is not buried like a private businessman who died on a holiday. According to Lillian, precedent, law, and national tradition are irrelevant. This is purely a pettiness project. She tries to toss out the Kenneth Kaunda precedent like it's a used tissue. KK died in Zambia, she says, so it's different. But the court didn't reference Kaunda to compare medical records. It referenced Kaunda to affirm that the burial of a head of state is not a purely private family decision. The principle stands whether the man died in Lusaka, Livingstone, or a hotel room in Johannesburg or Dubai. And her legal analysis, brace yourself, ladies and gentlemen. She alleges the South African judge ate a very big fat cake. This is code for he was bribed. Translation: if the court doesn't rule your way, it must be corruption. The problem is, South African court records are public. If there was misconduct, that's an appeal ground, not a Facebook Live talking point. But in Mutambo's storyline, judicial independence is an optional extra. She insists South African law gives the body to the next of kin, full stop. And yes, that's correct. For ordinary citizens, that's true. But heads of state are not ordinary citizens. This is why there was a court case in the first place, to resolve a clash between private family wishes and the public interest of a nation. That's not witchcraft. It's exactly what courts exist to do. Then she rolls out the PF succession sabotage theory that the government is dragging the burial to stop the Patriotic Front from choosing a leader. Of course, because the PF's years of factional infighting, parallel structures, and court battles over party leadership have nothing to do with the delay. It's all about holding a coffin hostage, naturally. And when the facts aren't enough, she shifts the stage to the spiritual realm. This is spiritual warfare, she declares. Political code for, don't ask me for evidence, just believe me. It's a clear move. Once the argument is spiritual, you can't cross-examine it. How do you subpoena a prophecy? So, the core facts remain simple. 1. Edgar Lungu was a head of state. 2. Zambian law and state protocol give the government a legitimate role in the burial of a former head of state. 3. South Africa's High Court heard both sides and ruled in favor of Zambia, applying the law, not Facebook theology. 4. If the family disagrees, the legal system has an appeal process. But instead of accepting that, we get 2 hours of verbal gymnastics where the government's actions are always malicious, the court's rulings are always corrupt, and the diaspora WhatsApp group is the last bastion of justice. And let's address the mockery narrative. Mutambo insists that the only reason the government wants the burial in Zambia is to humiliate Lungu. But here's the reality. In most countries, a former head of state is buried with official ceremony, whether or not they got along with the current president. It's about the office, not the friendship. You could have wrestled each other in parliament last year, but when one dies, the state steps in. That's called institutional respect, not a PR stunt. Mutambo's closing act is a plea to treat this as a Zambian family matter, ignoring the fact that the man in question wasn't just a family patriarch. He was a national figure. She wants the court to ignore precedent, protocol, and constitutional responsibility because in her telling, the government has no heart. But law is not built on sympathy alone. Ladies and gentlemen, if you believe national leaders should be buried according to law, not Facebook prophecy, comment law first below. Let's see how many still think institutions should outlast politicians. But here's the bigger question. Do we want a Zambia where the constitution decides, or a Zambia where livestream hosts and diaspora connections decide? Where court judgments are obeyed, or where we swap them for spiritual visions? The South African court didn't just flip a coin. It weighed legal arguments, considered the precedent of state burials, and ruled for Zambia. Whether you agree or not, the remedy is in appeal courts, not prophecy circles. And while Mutambo wants you to see this as the season of mockery, the truth is the season of legal clarity. Even if that clarity doesn't match your Facebook feed. Because whether you supported Lungu or opposed him, the law is clear. A former president is not just a family man. He is part of the national story. And that story isn't rewritten in WhatsApp groups. It's written in law books, in court rulings, and in the constitution. And that's the part of the story Mutambo doesn't want you to focus on. Because once you remove the prophecies, the insider calls, and the talk of a spiritual war, what's left is just one thing. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today. Please subscribe, share this video, and like it.